Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can even get yourself a nice 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we are looking at Pikachu and Zekrom tag team in the Sword and Shield meta. Now, it doesn't really gain a whole heap of new cards, but the few things it does get really does help the archetype out a lot. It did win the tournament over in Aichi in Japan, the first real and the only real indication that we have of this new Sword and Shield meta, and winning a over 1,400 player tournament is a pretty good indication that PikaRom is going to be powerful. Let's jump into that basic concept, and really I think the clutch card for PikaRom is Quick Ball. Quick Ball's phenomenal. Pika already had great ball search with things like electromagnetic radar and such, but the Quick Ball is extremely important for Tapu Koko Prism Star. The card is on such a high power level, and it's such an integral piece for trying to get full blitzing, that this card just being more accessible is really, really crazy. You can very easily get turn 2 full blitz at a very high percentage, and at the same time, you now have high roll potential of getting it turn 1, going second, to start swinging into people, which is just excellent for the deck. That sort of tempo for any deck is difficult to deal with, which is really sweet. Custom catchers are also becoming more important as we move towards a mixture of GX and V Pokemon in the format. So having a Volkner engine available to you is another big selling point, because you can access customs and you can access Reset Stamp, both two really integral cards of the format, as and when you need them, which is excellent. Another quick note on the format developing around PikaRom. Fairy Charms look a lot weaker because there's Zacian coming out, for one thing, to start stamping the Guardians out of the format. But also because we have Tapu Koko V. This is the same case for Keldeo GX. The card gets a lot worse in a V meta. Might not even see play anymore at all. But even if they do see play, those random Fairy decks or those random Keldeos, we can get through them with Koko V relatively easier. So that's a lot better for us. Onto the Pokemon now, and we have 3 Stellar Wish Jirachi. Obviously a great card for us to just get more pieces rolling. It's a good pivot for us as well. We have a really high switching count, so trying to make the most out of this Stellar Wish in those early turns and protect our PikaRom on the bench is definitely a good deal. PikaRom's always happier on the bench because it then has Koko Prism Star activation, which is a really good deal. Onto the attackers now. We have 2 of the main man, Pikachu and Zekrom. We all know what Full Blitz is about. Getting a bunch of energies into play for your future turns. This is actually really important in the format right now because of some hand-locking archetypes coming out. Mewtwo might move towards a Marnie-based Trevnoir sort of combo, so making sure you have plenty of energies just on the board to at least start swinging into them no matter what is really important. Tag Bolt, of course, still an excellent GX attack. Mew is going to be in and around the format, so something to bear in mind, but we do have customs that can still pick up the Mew, knock it out, and then try and Tag Bolt later on, which is worth noting because it's excellent to access things on the bench. Dedenne is still a big card in the format, and even just against 1-prize decks, taking a 2-prize swing can be really big. Choo-Choo, still an excellent card for dealing with other tag team Pokemon, thanks to that Lightning Ride GX that can do 250 for 5 energy, and then you move onto the bench. It's another reason why things like Jirachi are important in the deck, so that you can just send up a 1-prizer against the opponent when you do take that big knockout, in combination with Electropowers, which is obviously good. Tandem Shock, a little bit less useful right now when there are tag call packages floating around in all sorts of decks, so people have more outs to Mallow&Lana out of Paralysis, but still certainly a decent option if you are going to reset stamp them on the same turn. We have that Tapu Koko Prism Star for Dance of the Ancients. We have the Zapdos that can put some nice early pressure on people. Again, we have Quick Ball, so we have access to the Zapdos a lot easier now. So just taking swift knockouts against stuff can be really nice as a single prizer to try and skew the trade. 2 Dedenne GX to help us dig through the deck. Obviously, also a great card if we are going to try and get that full blitz on turn 1. If your opening hand looks strong, if you have good access to cards, why not try and go Dedenne, then Supporter, and try and get that full blitz rolling. Tapu Koko V is the new card from Sword and Shield, as is the Oranguru actually. But this Koko V is a nice free retreater, which is excellent, and comes with 2 attacks. As we know, this is a sort of wall breaker, and then it can get around those charms, get around Keldeo, which is something to bear in mind, but its own attacks aren't shabby just on their own. Spike Draw does 20, and you get to draw 2. Not the worst thing to do, especially with Electropower pressure. You could maybe just like knock out a Jirachi or something, whilst also drawing a couple of cards. And you also have the Thunderous Bolt attack available to you. for 2 lightning and a colorless. It's essentially the same damage output as a Tag Bolt GX, but you're not using your GX attack, which is obviously good. So again, this can finish things off. It can deal with some basic GXs pretty easily. So yeah, Thunderous Bolt, obviously scalable with Electropowers, just like the other stuff in the deck. So it is a pretty threatening card overall. That Oranguru has a great ability. Once during your turn, you can swap a card from your hand with the one on top of your deck. This can be excellent for protecting Electropowers, custom catchers, a few other pieces here and there, while we are going to be using the Dedenne a decent amount in the deck. And also we do have a couple copies of Professor's Research and Marnie that can also synergize with putting things on top, then getting fresh hands and accessing that card again, rather than having to discard it or put it to the bottom of the deck. So yeah, that can be pretty handy as well if need be. Onto the trainers, we're playing a great catcher as well as 4 customs. Should give us really easy access to our opponent's bench Pokemon when we have Jirachi and Volkner on our side. We have 1 tag switch as well as 2 energy switch. This can be an excellent option for us to move our energies around once we have used Full Blitz. It can get surprise GX attacks out of nowhere, which is really flexible. I also like having the 2 energy switch now that we are in a meta where you can go first without using a supporter. If you just don't have access to a Pikachu&Zekrom for whatever reason, you can just manually attach to something else, and you still have a couple E-switch in the deck to shift that over to the PikaRom maybe on your second turn, so something to bear in mind. A couple copies of Reset Stamp for disrupting our opponents, a couple copies of Tag Call that can access the PikaRom and the Choo-Choo as well as a couple of supporters that we play in the deck, so just a nice versatile card. We don't actually have that many targets in the list, so we're only playing 2 copies, but still a great thing to find off of early Stellar Wishes and whatnot. We have those customs, we have the Electropowers for obvious damage buff, we have those switches as well as the 1 Escape Board, which is a Guzma&Hala away from coming straight into our hand, so we're okay with playing the low count. And in general, this is just nice to move between our attackers, but also get our Jirachi in and out of the active to get more Stellar Wish value. The other tool that we play is the new Big Amulet. It gives us an extra 30 hit points on whatever we attach it to. This is really important for skewing math against a few different archetypes. Especially with the Pikachu&Zekrom only having 240. You can put the Big Amulet on to be a little bit less vulnerable to Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff, which is a big deal. And at the same time, it can really help out against ADP Zacian, where they can hit 260 with the buff of ADP. You do have resistance, of course, to metal, but that still brings you down to that 240, which is a knockout. So having that amulet keeps you out of range, which is really excellent. We have the 4-of Quick Ball, which is just an all-star card. You see a 4-of this card in basically every deck. For stadiums, I'm playing 1 copy of Viridian Forest, as well as 1 copy of Thunder Mountain Prism Star. Thunder Mountain, obviously a key piece, and it's another reason why we have these tag calls, just so that we have better access to Guzma&Hala, which can guarantee us that Thunder Mountain. Onto the supporters, I've just mentioned the tag call stuff. Guzma&Hala is the biggest one here. I'm just playing 1 of him and the Mallow&Lana, and I'm not playing any copies of Sinlin, because I don't think it's a powerful enough supporter, and in those opening turns, you would much rather go for the Guzma&Hala anyways. And oftentimes I play that 1 Sinlin just to give myself additional outs to at least draw some cards in those opening turns, but I feel that's way less relevant, especially when we have such powerful supporters available to us in this list exactly. But Guzma&Hala just phenomenal at getting us that switching piece. It can get us that Thunder Mountain, and it also accesses a Unit Energy Forest as well for guaranteed attachment, which is great. We've seen that be incorporated in recent lists pre-Sword&Shield, and it's done really, really well. That Mallow&Lana is a great healing option. There's a few things that like to try and set up knockouts on your Pikachu&Zekrom, and the more full blitzing you can get, the better. So trying to heal off that damage early on can be pretty handy for you. Also just an extra switching effect if we need it. Marnie and Professor's Research both feature in 2 counts here. Marnie for some extra hand disruption in addition to our stamps, whilst also refreshing our own hand, and Professor's Research just for a nice dig into the deck, whilst also having discard synergy with lightning energies that we'd like to get into the discard pile early on for our Tapu Koko Prism. We then play 3 Volkner for guaranteed energies. It can also guarantee things like Tag Call for turn 2 to use that Guzma&Hala, which is definitely a big deal, as well as late game helping us get those gusting pieces or Electropowers to push knockouts. So obviously just a really important card in the deck. Onto the energy, we play 1 copy of Unit Energy for that Guzma&Hala synergy, as well as 10 basic lightning, so we have enough to access early on, pitch a few along the way to get Koko rolling, and also have plenty in the deck still to use with Full Blitz. The full list is now on screen, so take a picture now if you want to, and it's always in the description as well. For tech options, there's a handful of basics that you could definitely be thinking of. Zeraora's previously been in the list. The main reason I'm not playing this card is because I'm fearful of Mega Lopuff. There is a big downside to having him in play. But that said, his ability against like many of the other matchups is really, really strong. Being able to pivot between your PikaRom and Choo-Choo and such can be very, very versatile. It makes your Zapdos much more easily usable as well. So there are big upsides to having Thunderclap Zone on your board, and I'm not going to ignore that fact. Also, the Full Voltage GX can be a nice, helpful option if we are expecting some energy removal to be big in the format. I know there are some Luke Metal builds of Zacian rolling around, and they have Crushing Hammers as well as that GX attack from the Luke Metal, so having a nice reload of the Full Voltage might be a reasonable option. Then we have a bunch of single prize basics that get way better just in general in the format with Quick Ball around. There's things like Mew that can be nice for Mirror and protecting Dedenne against the Mewtwo matchup. Mimikyu can also help out in that Mewtwo matchup for denying the abilities of Pokemon. Marshadow can clear Chaotic Swells out the way to make your Thunder Mountain more live. The reason I'm not playing that right now is because I think we have much better access to the Koko instead. If you just had a Quick Ball live, you'd probably just go for that rather than trying to reset hold to then get the Stadium in. Hooper is a nice option because he can sometimes tank hits from Mewtwo. The main reason he's not in here now is because oftentimes they copy Trevnoir and they would still knock out the Hooper. So he feels a little bit less useful than previously against Mewtwo, where oftentimes he can sponge the early Solgaleo hits. Fion could be nice for extra movement, but I think we have really good access to Gust already. And Absol could be nice for making life more difficult for other Jirachi-based builds out there. If you want to move towards other options in the Guzma&Hala package, I've definitely considered both Power Plant and Vital Band as decent options. Vital Band can do an extra 10 damage, which can be a really important breakpoint actually for a lot of different situations. It almost acts as a fifth Electropower in a lot of spots. It means you need no Electropowers to get through Dedenne as a full blitzing PikaRom. It means that you can hit a Heatran with a Vital Band plus an Electropower. Obviously, this is searchable via Guzma&Hala as well, so it's like you can scout it at the right time on the turn that you full blitz a lot of the time, which is really good. So you need like one less thing to get through a Heatran. And also it means against two 70 hit point tag teams and two 40 hit point tag teams, of which there are a handful, of course, you can either one Electropower plus Vital Band for the 240 with either Tag Bolt or with the Koko V, or you can do it with two Electropowers for 270. So I'm really wanting to squeeze this into the list right now, but I also see a lot of value in having that Giant Charm. So possibly making a space elsewhere might be worthwhile to get that Vital Band in the deck, just because it makes you find less Electropowers and really helps you push damage in certain spots. The Power Plant is also a nice option just to, again, try and shut down Mewtwo in any way that you can. And we're not super Dedenne reliant. I think if you do want to work in that Power Plant, though, you can go down to a 1 count of Dedenne to just have that disruptive element available to you. We've seen some recent Pikachu&Zekrom lists pre-Sword&Shield adopt Power Plant just to slow down things like Mewtwo. And there's also that option for Cynthia Caitlyn. It can help you reuse things like Mallow&Lana in a matchup where it's useful. It can help you reuse Marnie against matchups like some non-GX Blound matchups and stuff, just so you have more hand disruption available to you. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's that powerful, and I would rather just have access to more Volkners and the physical copies in general. Because we haven't maxed out counts of any of our supporters, it feels like you would just max out the count that you want the most before going for a Sinlin. Although this one can be a little bit more versatile in general, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Onto the matchup overview, I'm still a little bit concerned about that Welder Mew3 matchup. Right now, at least, I don't have the Vital Band or the Mimikyu or anything, really, to make that matchup much better. I'm just trying to be as consistent as possible right now with my opening lists, as I always try to be when I am profiling for new formats. But I do think that could still be a low-key issue. Florgus Dolls also seems a little bit awkward. Yes, we have Tag Bolt, yes, we have Customs, but they will dry out at some point. Bird Blounds also seems very awkward. We can't really hand disrupt them out of big knockouts because they always have that bird engine available to them, which also seems rough. Fossil Box, they can have some weakness against you. They can have Aerodactyl GX as well that can cause a big headache for you, so something to bear in mind. Pidgeotto Control, I think, is actually really awkward now that you don't play Zeraora GX because you don't have easy pivots, so they can trap stuff a little bit easier. And at the same time, you don't have that GX attack full voltage to get back a bunch of energies once they've started their hammer spams. Also, there's a new VMAX coming out in the set, which is obviously an awkward fighting type to deal with. Also has a heck load of hit points, so Stonejourner will definitely be an awkward matchup for you. Pretty much an auto loss, as long as they get relatively well set up in those opening turns. And I also think Eggrow could be a bit of a problem for Pikachu and Zekrom. The natural damage output of this archetype isn't all that strong, especially when they have healing and reduction involved, which I think will overall be a little bit awkward for you. So yeah, something that could also cause a bit of a headache. On to the closing thoughts. Although I have said there are a few awkward matchups to navigate, Pikachu and Zekrom is just fast and consistent, and that just spells a good deck in general. I believe he'll be towards the top end of the tier list, like minimum tier 2 PikaRom, just because of how consistently it can get its plan A going. Compared to most other decks in the format, it just seems very simple and effective, which is obviously a good thing it has going for it. And there's also a decent cult following of PikaRom early on at least. People are very happy to pick up and play this deck because they've got experience with it in the past. So I would certainly expect PikaRom to be one of the more popular archetypes out there in early tournaments in this meta. So definitely one that you should be bearing in mind. I also think there are a few other ways you can try and build PikaRom, of course. We've seen a Judge ROM work in previous formats, and now we have a busted version of Judge in Marnie. So giving yourself more draw whilst also trying to give your opponent that same low card hand size in those opening turns could be an excellent option for sure. I'm playing a couple of copies right now just to get that value in certain matchups, but I haven't gone all out on it. But I could certainly see it becoming a full 4 count and just going more towards the Dedenne Bull Search to give yourself decent options into large hand sizes once you've already used that Marnie, which is pretty cool. Speaking of a heavier Dedenne GX count, if you want to really go back to a turbo build of PikaRom, where you just try and get that Koko down and get full blitzing on 1, potentially more Dedenne GX are in store for you. Also, there's Electromagnetic Radar that you could be thinking of. Pretty much you just scrap the Tag Call package, you change Guzma&Hala for Stadium Nav, you change your Tag Calls for Electro Radars, and then you just have a bunch of Dedenne GX outs to Dedenne change over and over again. It does leave you open to Mega Low Puff, but if you are getting that turn 1 full blitz, maybe that doesn't matter so much. So let me know what you guys think of PikaRom in this format. Is it one of your favorites? Do you think it's going to be a big winner from the set? I'll hear it all down below. Are you going to be tweaking the support account any away from the tag call engine? It's what we saw recently do well in Standard, and it's what we've also seen do well in Japan. So I have no reason to doubt it, especially because that Guzma&Hala is so good at getting that Thunder Mountain. But I could also foresee mirror match situations where you just want to be the faster one of the two and just get on the board more quickly and just Dedenne change your hand away. You could even go down a full-on 4 Professors Research for Dedenne build and just cycle that deck as quickly as possible to work towards that combo. So yeah, that's my thoughts on PikaRom. I hope you did enjoy, guys, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow.